Today is July the 20th, 2009, and I'm here with Myr-Lou Rollins Wade, and she's going to talk a little bit about her time here at OSU as a dance instructor. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start by having you talk a little bit about your childhood, where you were born, and then we'll work our way forward.
Do you want the birth date also? Or?
If you want to do it, that's fine.
Well, I was born February 5th, 1935 in Corpus Christi, Texas, in my mother's bedroom, which that was an ordeal too back in those days. She was supposed to go to the hospital, but it didn't happen, so I came in the bedroom. Anyway, I went to school and graduated from high school at Corpus Christi High School in 1952. Then went to Del Mar Junior College for a little while. And since I had danced all of my life, I was more interested in dance than I was at college. And the teacher at the time that was very good for encouraging me and doing a good job of promoting me thought it would be good for me to go to Hollywood. So my parents reluctantly, and we were not really well endowed, but they were able to scrape up enough money because I was so unhappy not being able to dance that I was sent to Hollywood and had a real good opportunity to study with different people there. But I soon found out that I was not interested in that style of life and was eager to come back home after about 6 months of being there. And I got enough of Hollywood, came back, and I was told about Texas State College for Women having a dance degree in recreation, or a dance. They had actually a performing group and a dance program. So I went to Texas State College for Women and auditioned for their dance group and was accepted. And for 3 years then, and plus summers, I was with the Texas Women's, it was Texas State College for Women dance group, which we toured all over, going to different colleges. And my senior year, we came to Oklahoma A&M, and we stayed, I think it's Murray Hall, or well, I don't remember now which dorm it was we stayed in, but we had to walk across Theta Pond to go to the concert hall to rehearse and get ready for our concert. And it was spring, and it was beautiful. The campus was the prettiest. People were the friendliest, and we had been to many different college campuses at that time. And I just fell in love with the campus. But little did I know, when we got on the bus ready to go back home, this woman came in and sat down beside me and asked me if I was interested in coming to teach. And I, at that time, really wasn't thinking. I was just interested in graduating and getting through, but I hadn't really thought where I was going to go to teach or anything. But that made my decision very easy because it was such a beautiful campus and everybody was so friendly. And my dean at the time had a fit. She said, you need to go interview all these other places, which some of them were all of the East, because back then dance was not all that popular in the educational system. And I said, no, I don't need to go interview. I'm perfectly happy coming to Oklahoma, which my parents thought it was a Indian country, and back in '56, you didn't let young ladies go very far, but anyway, they let me go to Hollywood, so I guess they thought it was okay for me to go to Oklahoma. So that is the way I ended up at Oklahoma A&M at that time. And it was with the promise that I would get my master's, so I had to go back to Texas State College for Women during the summers and do also correspondence courses to get my master's. And that time they changed to Texas Women's University, and of course after I was at Oklahoma A&M for a while. It changed to Oklahoma State University, so every place I've been has changed their names on me.
Well, when you first started here, how many classes did you have to teach?
I don't recall how many specifically, but each semester it seemed like we had at least 5 or 6 classes that we were expected to teach, and those were the 2-hour physical education classes, of which most of them were dance at that time, but then I did teach a bowling and gymnastics and body mechanics. They also had what was called body mechanics at that time, which that was the forerunner to aerobics. I think that name you probably recognize more than body mechanics. But
And where were the classes? Where did you teach? What building?
well, our head, when it first came, it was a definite division of the women's department and the men's department, which the men were, of course, in the field house, which at that time was called the field house instead of Gallagher Iba. And our department was in Gardner Hall.
Okay.
We had our main offices there. But then I taught, there was social dance or ballroom dance that I taught in the old gym, which is the armory, which now is what's the art department, and they've changed it completely, or are in the process of changing it anyway. And the dance studio was down in the basement of North Murray Hall, which was a disastrous place because it flooded several times. I don't know if that has been mentioned in the history of OSU or not. But and then of course when I taught bowling, I had to go to the student union, so I had a lot of leg work. Used a bicycle for a while to go from place to place, and then we got, at that time there weren't that many vehicles on campus really and truly, so it wasn't that difficult to park, but we did get permits to park at the student union, so when it was the years I taught bowling, it didn't have to walk that far.
We should probably say you were here from 1956
to 1986.
86. So give us a time frame of when we're talking about.
Now, when I first started with dance, it was basically private dance studio, which was ballet and tap and acrobatics at that time. And then somewhere around my senior year in high school, we started hearing about this weird thing called modern dance, contemporary dance, which back in those days it started with Ruth St. Denis and the Scarves and more free dance type thing where you didn't have to wear ballet shoes or any kind of shoes. You danced barefooted, and you had much more freedom of movement, which when I found out that you could do that, I really fell in love with the idea of the creative freestyle of modern dance. And so then I started studying. Of course, when I went to Hollywood, that was the professional introduction, which I studied at the Alvin Ailey Dance School, which they still have even though he's no longer living, they still have a touring group that performs his style of modern dance. So I've forgotten where I was going now.
No, when you
then I had to teach modern dance when I came here. That was what they were in. And of course at Texas State College for Women, it was a modern dance group. We did a ballet each time just to have a variety of the styles, but most of the time it was a creative type of modern dance that they were interested in promoting.
You had to do costumes, I guess, too, for some of that?
Oh, yes. We started with the, I'll back up. When I had to do my master's, Texas State College for Women were doing their thesis were creative theses. They were not research projects as far as, all literary. It was you had to choreograph, create a suite of dances based upon some story. And I thought, well, since I was in Oklahoma, that I would create Sweeter Dances based upon the history of Oklahoma.
Oh, neat.
And that was my first introduction to this library, was digging through some of the dirty history books of Oklahoma, which they were really old ones back in those days, and getting some things that would be interesting to create a dance. And so that was my thesis, of which I used the students here, and then we had to go to Texas for my committee to observe them and approve of the dance style. But of course it all had to be written and documented also, and I also created the music at that time, plus the costumes, as you said. So it was the whole process of doing that. Now, as far as costumes, when I first came, down in North Murray, they had a attic type place back there that had some boxes of old costumes, of which Flora Mae Ellis, I don't know if you've had that name preceded to you, but she was the dance person before I came. And she was doing a lot of this free type of dance with scarves and the more of the Ruth St. Dennis and Mary Vigman and their type of dance. And so what costumes that they had, plus trying to, at that time there was not a budget for dance, but Mr. Kevin, who was the head of the department, and Miss Colvin, who bless her heart, she was my mentor and promoted me, helped me a lot, was able to get some funds so that I could create some costumes for those dances. And of course those dances were also used in the concerts, of which I had a concert every year that had to be done, or was done, I guess. I don't remember whether that was a requirement or I wanted to do it. But we did it anyway, giving the students the opportunity to experience this new style of dance, which most of them, like myself, had only been trained in a studio with ballet and tap, and later on jazz came about, which was a new style to incorporate in the classes also.
Where would you do the performances? Was there a stage somewhere?
Yes, well, the concert hall, which was not Saratine at that time, okay. Everybody called it the auditorium. That is where we performed the dances.
Were there as many men as there were women that participated?
No, very few, and but we did from year to year have some men that would try out for the dances, and of course I was eager to use them as best I could for, and some of them had some experience and some of them didn't. They just were eager to try it out, you know. And I would give anyone a stab at it if they were willing to give the time, and that was another problem of finding rehearsal time that everybody was able to get together and work for doing the dances and having them perfected for the concert.
At that time they were required to have PE, physical education classes? Well,
yes, the requirements were for the classes, but as far as the concerts, the tryouts were open to the whole university, and anyone that was interested could come. Like I said, there were people that were in the classes, but that wasn't, for several years there was no requirement for them to be in the concert, but then there were certain years that when the physical education majors were supposed to be taking dance classes, which that was an important part of physical education at one time, was to promote dance along with sports, that through their required classes it was a part of their requirement to participate in the concert. And some of them were not very willing to do that, but they did.
Would classes generally be in the morning, or would they be later afternoon?
Well, the classes could have been either in the morning or the afternoon. Now, the rehearsals, we had to, as far as practice and everything, had to occupy the late afternoon and the evening hours, so that to try to get a group of students together to rehearse was not easy when they had many different, class schedules. And then when we moved into the Colvin Center, we had conflicts with the recreation classes, which were used in the dance studio. And so then we weren't able to rehearse at nights all that many times because they had recreation classes in the dance studio. So that became a problem.
Well, talk a little bit about the dance studio. What was it like, the studio itself?
Well, North Murray was basically a cement and tile floor, which was not the best for dance. And also being in the basement at that time, we did not have air conditioning, so that was not the best for circulation. We had fans down there, but in the afternoons and evening, the sun made it pretty unbearable, which we endured the heat a lot easier then than we do now because we weren't used to air conditioning. But going to the Colvin Center, I will explain that when it came time to create the Colvin Center, each of us in our own areas were asked to give recommendations for space, designs, whatever that we wished for the new building. So with my creative mind, I started thinking about the best dance studio I could come up with, and I designed, and I could not find it, but I have somewhere, I think, still the original drawing that I designed on scale, putting down, exactly where I wanted the electrical outlets and the mirrors. And the one goof I made was I wanted curtains to cover the mirrors. Well, I didn't know that you had to have a third, I think it is, of the space for the curtains to go back, and it would cover up the mirrors. So we never used the curtains because I didn't want the mirrors covered up, because that is an important part of learning your dances, is to watch yourself in the mirror to see that you're corresponding with everybody else. But then also you have to, when it comes time to perform, we'd have to turn around the other way so that they wouldn't be using the mirrors. And that's the reason I wanted the curtains, was so we could cover up the mirrors when it came time for performing. But anyway, and also I created costume room, which up to that time I was making costumes in my apartment, and with my own sewing machine and everything. And then when the budget allowed, that they bought me a sewing machine for the costume room, and it had a beautiful big table that you could lay patterns and materials out to cut and sew. It was a beautiful costume room. I was so proud of it. And the studio was beautiful too. But then recreation came along and wanted the use of the floor space for their classes, and so then we had to compete with trying to keep shoes off the floor, dirt off the floor, because we weren't barefooted, and of course did all of our stretches and working on the floor, which was nice to have a clean floor. And also then when physical education is divided into health, leisure sciences, and physical education, they started hiring more people, and they also had the graduate program developed, and they needed graduate assistants. So they took over my costume room, and all the costumes and everything had to be moved out into closets in the dance studio, which took up dance studio space. Plus, it was not good because, they finally put locks on them, but then people would break into the locks to see what was in the costume room, the closets, which naturally wasn't anything they were interested in, but they'd break into them to find out what was in there. So all of my beautiful things that I worked for soon started disappearing. So the first 25 years were very fun and encouraging, and the last 5 were starting to wither away my ideas because, as I said, the Board of Regents, I assume, I don't know, but we also had a change of administration. We were in the College of Arts and Sciences, and at that time, Dean Holt did not think physical education should be a part of the College of Arts and Sciences. He wanted it to be in College of Education because it was basically a teaching program. And the head of our department, Dr. Obley, I don't guess was a very fond person of dance. I don't know exactly how it happened, but he, somewhere along the line, they decided that dance was not a part of the required program, which of course all physical education credits went, and so therefore I guess it all fit in with the dance deal also. And they started cutting the requirements for the physical education majors. I think now they just take 1 class of combined dance, and at the time they had 4 different classes, of which they took modern dance, folk, square, and social, a choreography class, and a dance production class, which was the concert performing part of the class, so that when they went out to teach that they could do a dance program after having some experience, which most of them had never had any dance when they came to OSU. So I think that started with the costumes, and I don't know where.
No, I'm thinking now with Dancing with the Stars, dancing's becoming more.
Oh, I tell you, do you know? I don't think my body could exist in what they're doing in dance classes now. It's really amazing to me, with especially all these spins on the different parts of their body, which I don't think the Lord ever made us and intended to do that. But anyway, I did want to go back to the costumes. That since it was limited, I had to do the creation and the making of the costumes. We used leotards and tights as basics instead of trying to fit each individual body to a certain costume, and then using parts and pieces like skirts that had elastics in them, or scarves that you could pin on different ways. And when you look through the pictures, you'll see that basically everybody has a leotard and tight on, and then something is added to make it appropriate for their dance that they were creating. And each of the concerts had a different title, and I have a book that has all those programs in there that you can look through and see if you're interested in those, that to come up with a theme for the concert and then try to create dances that interpret that theme or that title, which I was intent on trying to make it creative dance, not just movement for movement's sake. And then of course jazz came along, and that became popular. Everybody wanted to do jazz.
Mm-hmm. So you had to continually be learning new things yourself.
Well, I did. I have all kind of workshops that I went to during the summer to study under different people, and of course new ideas were evolving all the time, so it was hard to keep up with it, for sure.
Among all of your students, did you have a favorite or two that just stand out in your mind?
Well, there were students that were very eager to perform and would come back every year. And I created what was called the Leo Award, which I designed the shape of the basic, at that time, the basic black leotard at the very beginning was a short sleeve leotard made out of cotton knit. And if they participated in 4 dances, the 4 years that they were here, which included 6 dances, some years they do 2 dances instead of just 1 in the concert, then their name was put on that plaque. And so I had several students that continued to do the dances to be honored to be on the Leo Award. But as far as name dropping,
you don't have to.
if you don't want, I do have certain students, and I can tell you later on if you don't want it on the thing.
It's up to you. If you want it on a tape, that's fine.
Well,
I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Of course, the one that stands out of interest for most people is Sandy Mall at the time, who married Garth Brooks.
Oh, okay.
The last 2 years of 84 and 85, she participated in a dance concert. And the last year, she had met Garth, and he would come to pick her up after rehearsals, you know. And I tried to get him to participate in the concert, but he was so busy singing and playing his music that he wasn't interested at that time. And of course, they got married, and everybody knows where they lived. My apartment was not too far from them, and sometimes I'd see them walking their dog out and would meet them out that way sometimes. And then another one that people might know is Carol Ann Drummond, which, you know, Dr. Drummond's mother. She was one of the students that participated. So I've had some students that I know from that have continued to do very well.
Sure. Did you ever imagine that you would stay in the same spot for 30 years in your career?
Well, you know, back in those days, I think longevity was more prominent than it is now. And I can remember the last, maybe 10 years that everybody kept saying you need to change and go to another place. Well, I wasn't interested in changing. I was very happy here. I enjoyed it. I had good support for the dance, which the budget was very limited, but and I would like to mention that Dr. Calm, which he was the head of the College of Arts and Sciences, was very supportive of the arts and dance especially, and he and Maxine were, and I have some thank you letters that they wrote me for the concerts that I did and everything, and of course Miss Colvin, Valerie Colvin, which I would like to make a point, which I'm hearing students call her Colvin instead of Colvin, and her name is Valerie Colvin, not Cole. And she would be very unhappy because she was a very proper Southern lady that she thought everything had to be perfect and correct. So I hope that if nobody else is correcting the students, and that they do get that corrected, that her name is Colvin. And she was very good to help me with the dance. She was very supportive.
Did she ever do some of it?
Oh, no.
No.
But she did teach. She was a little, I don't know if you've had any of knowledge of her pictures, but she was a very tiny, extremely active to her late years that she would teach. And creative rhythms was another class that originally it was called what was it, elementary education classes, that they had activity. The elementary teachers were required to take an activity class, which she promoted the sports and dance activities also. And then they decided they needed a creative rhythms class for elementary teachers, which was not a requirement, but they could take that as a physical education requirement at that time. And that was a fun class that I taught, that we would take the elementary teachers to the elementary schools here and let them experience working with the elementary children through creative rhythms. And
that had to be fun.
Well, it was a good, some of them decided they didn't want to be an elementary teacher after they, I don't think at that time they had, gave the students an opportunity to actually experience some of their degrees that they had chosen. But it was a good class, and I enjoyed that too. And I don't remember now why it was deleted from the requirements, but there were a lot of changes that seemed like they constantly, which of course I guess that's progress, is change.
I don't know if now if they even require any physical education for
I don't think
freshmen
so.
or even here.
And like I said, even the physical education majors are very limited with what activity classes they are required to take anymore. So it's a whole different world.
Did your parents ever come up and watch any of your
Yes, once or twice they did. My mother was very supportive. My dad, of course, he wasn't a well, neither one of them. They had a lick of rhythm to them or ability to dance, and I don't know where I came about it, but they did come up twice, I think. It was not easy to travel back in those days, and of course then my father became ill early and weren't able to do much.
Well, what do you think prompted you to your interest in it to begin with, the dance?
Well, I was told that I was very shy, and I'd always, of course everybody wore skirts back at those days, and I'd always, whenever they'd be out, I'd always hide behind mother's skirt, or how kids do, trying to hide behind. And she thought that it would be good for me to take dance to try to overcome that shyness. So she took me to the one teacher they had in Corpus at that time. Her name was Elsie. And she said, "Oh, I don't take children that young." But she said, "Well, if you'd like to come and watch the class and see." So anyway, Mother would come with me, and they told me that I wouldn't get off of her lap, but they would observe the classes. And Mother says that the first time that I finally got off of her lap, that I never wanted her back in the room again. And for some reason, it really took. And then that teacher had to have a leave of absence to have some children. And I took from another studio, which I was not as happy with them. And so when my original teacher started teaching again, then I went back to her. And she was a perfectionist, and she made sure she was very intent on the correct usage of the body. And that's where I got a good background in exercise and understanding how to use your body correctly, not to cause injuries. And she was a very good inspiration. So I assumed that, plus she would take us to conventions and we'd see professional people, and they would pat you on the back and encourage you. That's right.
Well, campus has changed a lot since '86, but from '56 to '86 it probably changed quite a bit too. And they were having homecoming. Did you do anything specifically with homecoming for dance was concerned?
No. The coordinating dance in activities on campus was not very easy. There was a time when Max Mitchell, who was the head of the music department, had an interest in trying to coordinate the arts. And we did some dance with the music department. And that was somewhat well received, but the music people had their own agendas for what they wanted to promote, and they were not interested in coordinating or using their talents as a backup, so to speak, for dance. Mm-hmm. Now, since then, and there was a performance not too long ago that a lady, I don't remember her name, and her daughter performed on the stage. The daughter was a dancer, and the mother was a music professor in the department. And I was real glad to see them allowing some coordination there. And then the theater tried to coordinate with the theater, and at that time Vivia Locke was very proper with her drama, and that she did not think musical comedy or music, the coordination of acting and dancing, singing was not a part of her agenda. She wanted to do Shakespeare and more classical things. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that as soon as they built the Saratine Center, where they had the theater, which was ideal for dance because the concert hall stage was just deplorable at that time. The nails and the splinters were not good for bare feet. And Armando Cartini, thank goodness, I said his name wrong, but anyway, he tried to improve the stage as much as possible. But we were allowed to perform on the theater stage 1 year, and Vivia Locke about had a fit because we were occupying her departmental time for using the theater for their rehearsals. And so one year was the end of any type of trying to coordinate with the theater department. But it's such a blessing that they have Peter Westerhoff now that do dance, and they are promoting musicals. And I assume you know that I have, well, originally I started first with the endowed scholarship through the College of Education, trying to promote a person that might be interested in dance and physical education, to have them an opportunity for a scholarship. And then I did a scholarship in the College of Arts and Sciences through the theater department for a person interested in dance there. So even though dance is almost evaporated from the campus, trying to keep a spark going in the physical education, and of course, like I said, the theater department is doing a very good job of encouraging dance there.
Well, and back in the late 70s too, a lot of dorms, sororities would have dances. Would they ask for any private lessons or anything at that time?
No, we did have quite a few people that would try out for the tryouts were at the beginning of the spring semester each year, and they'd be gung-ho, but then the Varsity Review would come along and other spring sing and all their activities, so that would be a real challenge for the students to try to do both rehearsals and practicing, for both activities. So I did not have much working with the sororities as far as coordinating dance. Now, some of the people that would take dance would work with their Varsity Review, do the choreography and things like that. But I did not have a lot of coordination with them that way.
Well, changing gears just a little bit, you mentioned that you also taught bowling. Do you want to talk a little bit about the alley or anything like that for the record?
Well, that was an experience. I had bowled some, and I guess that's the reason I was asked to teach some bowling, and then again I had to do some studying to to be able to know exactly what to do. And they had people come on campus workshops that we were able to go to get more information about bowling. And that was a nice break from dance, but it was also a challenge. I'll back up. When I first started, all the classes were women's classes, and then some of the men would choose to take the ballroom social dance, and there was a time period when it was very active. I'd have up to 200 people in a social dance or ballroom dance at that time, and not always were there equal men and women, but in the bowling classes, then you would end up with more men than women. And that was an experience, too, to work with the bowling. But I don't remember too much other than, the first thing that originally the bowling alley was not automated. You had to go back and set the pins. So we had to rotate. The classes were 3 times a week, so you'd have to rotate to one of your class periods would be behind the bowling alley to set pins. which the students were not very eager to do that. It was hot and dirty and noisy and everything else. And some of them, you know, everybody has their own talent, and you're not always able to adapt to all the talents. And some of the girls were not able to understand the mechanics of how to pull the lever to let the pins down and to watch for the balls. And you had to stay very alert because it could be dangerous to work back there. So that was an experience, to have to coordinate students to agree to do that. And then, of course, later on they came up with the automated system. And originally you learned how to do your own scoring, which some students, their talent was not math. So that was a challenge. And anyway, there was a lot of changes in all departments as, I guess, technology improved.
Well, the alley was in the
basement
of the current student.
Yes. The all of the, I think the student activity, what do they call those, pigeonholes or whatever they call them. That's not what you call them.
Carols? No.
Well, okay, I think that's the more technical, you know, where they have their little desk that they do their thing. That's where the bowling lanes were, down in that area.
I haven't been in the basement in a long time.
I
need to go look.
Yeah.
There was always the story that Pistol Pete shot off his gun in the basement somewhere over there too. We don't know where either. So that's either here or there. But
well, the basement originally, the bowling alley was the only thing down there, and then they came up with the games room. And if you talk to Alan Redding, he'll have all the information about the changes that they made in the basement. But
well, do you remember much of the hubbub over the name change from OAMC to OSU? It happened like 57, 58 in there somewhere. Do you remember?
Well, I don't remember what year it did change.
57. Right about when you came.
Well, I guess so. I guess, well, you know, like I said, Texas State College for Women changed their name. I think everybody was increasing their status, I guess you'd say, by changing the name to a university from a college. And I don't remember that I was always so, what do you call it?
Very
narrow,
focused.
Focused or whatever, to dance, that I wasn't always in on understanding what was going on. I just went with the flow and did what I had to continue. So I don't recall the big hubbub. I know my brother and all of his kids graduated from Texas A&M, you know, and that was always a comparison of if Oklahoma A&M changed their name, should Texas A&M change theirs? And they weren't about to change, so Texans are more stubborn, I guess.
Well, you went through several the presidents of the campus probably changed a couple times while you were here.
Oh, yes, and I don't recall all of them except for Dr. Kahn, which I always had great admiration for his personality and abilities.
Well, back in 56, when you first came, you were single, away from home, not for the first time, though, second time, I guess. Anything about Stillwater you recall?
Well, it was very small. I did, well, I'll back up. When it was time for me to get a job, and I didn't have a car, because back in those days you didn't have cars when you were in college. In fact, Texas State, Texas State College for Women didn't even allow a vehicle on campus. If you needed one, you had to get a special permit, and generally it was for handicapped people or some, I don't know who managed to get them, but anyway, I did not have a car, so I had to purchase a car. And back in those days, new cars were not always readily available anyway, and I got me a 56 Chevy Bel Air, which, oh, it was a beautiful white car, and now then those are classics. I wish I still had it, but anyway, when I first came to Stillwater, everybody took a double take to see that car because there weren't that many of that style car. And I had to have what few belongings I had shipped by train, which back in those days, I don't know, I guess my father knew how to do it, but that was a problem because my belongings didn't show up for 2 or 3 days. My mother came with me because she did not want me coming up here by myself. And places to live were not that easily available. And Miss Colvin drove all over town, which was a small town at that time, looking for a place, an apartment for me to live. And she saw them building these apartments behind a house, a 2-story apartment. And she stopped and talked to the people which were the Diggs. And they said, well, they were going to try to have it available come August or September, or whenever I was supposed to be here. So it was a brand new apartment when I moved in. Oh, and I might back up. When this lady asked me, when she came on the bus, asked me if I wanted a job, and I said yes. Well, when I got home that summer, and my father wanted to see the contract, and I said, well, I don't have a contract. He said, well, how do you know you have a job? And I said, well, they talked to me and told me, and later on I got a letter, saying that I'd been accepted, and I guess all that time I just thought I had a job. But everything was so informal back in those days, and with phone calls and letters that, and like I said, Miss Colvin finding me a place to stay, that that's how I arrived.
Did you stay in that same place your entire?
You're going to get me to admit something.
No, I'm not.
I still pay rent on that same place. I've purchased it many times. But I met my husband in '86 when things were not going too well. Well, I didn't talk about that, but when they started doing away with dance, I was told I would have to teach health, and I've forgotten now what else, some other classes which I was not trained, I was not prepared to teach, and I think they were interested in getting rid of dance anyway, and luckily it was I was able to, the 80 plan, being 51, to take early retirement. And so that was, well, I forgot where I was started, was meeting my husband in '86. Anyway,
still paying rent on the
still paying rent. Well, when dance was not being allowed to, I was not being allowed to continue to teach dance, I'll put it that way, that I had plans for a 30-year concert to have students from the past come up back, and some of them were eager to do that. Well, the powers to be did not want, they would not give me a budget, and they did not want any dance period, so I did not get to do a dance concert. And about that time, the Stillwater Ballroom Dance Club was developing, and they needed a person, or they wanted a person to teach some dance. So I was contacted to help with the Ballroom Dance Club in the community to get started with the dance lessons. So I went to one of their dances to observe, and this man asked me to dance, and long story, but anyway, 3 years later we got married. And at that time he has a house in Perry that was full of stuff, and I had an apartment in Stillwater that was full of stuff. So I just agreed to, or he agreed, we both agreed to keep that apartment, and I still pay rent on it, and I still have an apartment full of stuff, and he still has a house full of stuff, and we both have more stuff than we need.
And that's been 20 years or so, hasn't it?
It has been, yes. Never realized it would last that long, but anyway, it has. He likes to dance. He's very creative. He's extremely hard of hearing, and nobody understands how he can feel the rhythm. Sure. But he has a beautiful rhythm, and he's very creative with some of his steps, and so it clicked. And we've enjoyed dancing, even though I had to give up my modern and ballet and all the other forms of dance. I enjoy doing. We do country western and polka dancing, and we've kind of given up ballroom dancing now because we don't drive at night that much, so we don't come to Stillwater at nights.
Well, yeah, all of those different ones require different attire too, don't they?
Yes,
yeah.
More or less, yeah. And supposedly a different style, but we just have our one style, so we do.
I don't have a rhythm in my body, so I admire someone who does. So it's a shame that they don't still have it.
Well, what I said about everybody having their own talents, either you have a talent for dance or you don't.
I don't.
Now, there was a period in time when people said, oh, everybody can dance, but I don't think that's true. Just like everybody can't be an artist or everybody can't be a musician. There are certain talents that you're limited with.
So you still stay in shape then by doing a little dance every day, or
Oh, no, I don't do much.
Every day?
I like working out in the yard and doing things that I stay active, that's for sure, but I don't. Well, my body was starting to rebel after dancing barefoot for years on a cement tile floor, and even though the dance studio floor was a very nice floor, it takes the toll on bare feet after a while, so I started having heel spurs and problems like that I had to start changing my ways. Plus your bones don't want to move like they used to anyway.
Slow ballroom dancing then. Well, do you have a favorite memory of all of your time here?
Well, the favorite memory is just working with students in dance, that giving them the opportunity to explore something new and different, which, like I said, the modern dance was different for them.
Well, I have to come back and ask one more question about the library. It was built, I think, it was new when you first came.
Beautiful.
Very, very new building. Any particular stories about it besides digging for the old history books?
Well, I think third floor was the art area that had dance. And there was a lady that was very eager to get more dance books. And so every time I would find something that sounded interesting in the dance magazines, that I would, give her a list of books, and she would, and I used those, that area of the library quite frequently for the majors, expecting them to do some research on different people in the history of dance and everything like that. It was used quite a while during a certain period of time, plus the fact that sometimes there would be, seems like if you had absences that you could make up work with library work. I can't remember now what the detail was.
That's interesting.
Exactly, but I would have them come up to the third floor and do the dance research and write a paper about that.
That's good to hear that a librarian helped you keep the collection
Yes, it
going,
was.
too.
I really enjoyed the usage of the library, and I wish I did not write down all the names of people that were so helpful at times, but she was really good at what would, and I can't think of what would that area have been called in the library that.
Well, they're divided into different sections too, and I want to think it was in the 400s is art, but I'm not sure. I work up on government documents before I started doing this. So I'm not as familiar with the rest
I
of it.
can't remember what it was. A section, you know.
The social sciences and humanities.
Maybe it was humanities was the section.
Probably.
And then they had a specific dance
Section.
number that I guess I should take time to go up and look and see if they still have some of those books.
They probably do. Well, I've asked all of my questions. Is there anything else you want to add before we call it a day?
Well, I can't. It was my life, and that was a good one. And then when you ask about if I ever thought about changing jobs, I don't know if this was typical of everybody, but I stayed and lived in the same apartment that was rented from 56, which I continued to pay for it, and the same job. My brother, his interest was chemical engineering, and after he got his degree from Texas A&M, of course had to do ROTC stint, he went into working with Celanese at Bishop, Texas, and he spent his 30 years or more, I can't remember now exactly how many years but he had only one job his whole life too. So our parents were not educated. They didn't, neither one of them, I don't think, ever went to high school, but they did a beautiful job of giving us the opportunity to do what we wished to do, and they were very proud and very happy that we were successful.
Well, OSU was lucky to have you for 30 years, sounds like. So, thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad that you're interested in receiving some of this information.
It's great. I will look forward to looking through all the pictures. It'll make me wish I'd gone to school here.